Coronavirus, The Rundown. I'm Chris Stewart. Each day we showcase the ways communities are taking on coronavirus, and we also break down the headlines. And today, some encouraging news about jobs. The unemployment rate fell to 13.3% in May. The Bureau of Labor Statistics says the economy gained 2.5 million jobs. It says the numbers reflect a partial reopening of economies. The May rate was lower than the nearly 20% many economists predicted. New coronavirus cases are rising at a record rate across the world. New data from Johns Hopkins University shows that more than 100,000 new cases on average came over 7 days. It says the record high was set June 3rd. There were more than 13,000 new cases that day. Some experts think the increase is because countries are doing more testing. Well, some businesses are being forced to close permanently in the wake of COVID-19, but many companies who specialize in robotics and artificial intelligence say their phones are ringing off the hook. And Alexa Liacco spoke with engineers about the rise of the robot.
They're scanning your shelves, moving stock through warehouses, and sorting your trash.
Robots and artificial intelligence are going to change how we do business.
But when COVID-19 decimated business for so many, relying on robots made surviving possible.
We were already on that path. Coronavirus just put TNT behind it.
Melanie Wise and Matanya Horowitz both run robotics companies. During the pandemic, Wise's company, Fetch Robotics, has seen a 60% spike in requests for their robots who assist warehouse workers.
They already were suffering from a massive labor shortage, and then COVID really forced them to have even less people in the building, more separated, things like that, and so they need automation to stay competitive.
Horowitz says his earnings at AMP Robotics have doubled this year over last year. The artificial intelligence can recognize and sort materials in recycling plants where employees usually work in close quarters.
Many of these facilities weren't designed with social distancing in mind, and so people are working shoulder to shoulder on these lines. And I've heard of all kinds of things. Facilities are putting up shower curtains to try to, keep people separated.
But with robots in between the humans, it forces social distancing and spreads out responsibility.
The sorters like the robots because they're usually filling a task, and if somebody's next to the robot, now they're basically not having to do two people's jobs.
But do more robots and fewer workers on the line mean job loss? Supply chain management expert Hitendra Chaturvedi says not for Americans.
We are not going to take jobs away from us, but we are going to take the job away from China.
What it creates is higher tech jobs, where you now have data analysts, you now have technicians and things like that in these facilities. And so we hope we're creating different types of jobs.
New jobs for an age where technology takes a front seat, so businesses can leave the heavy lifting to the robots.
And people are seeing these facilities that are heavily automated are able to weather the crisis really well.
I'm Alexa Liacco reporting.
More tech companies are arranging for permanent work from home, and it could set a new standard for all job types.
The tech sector is over-concentrated in a very short list of places, Seattle, the Bay Area, Boston, in a way that really is harmful to the tech industry, but also harmful to the rest of the country.
Mark Murrow with the nonprofit Brookings Institution says most of the country's regional economies aren't seeing tech grow the way they were promised. This comes while big tech hubs see more traffic and an increased cost of living. Murrow says what's happening with tech jobs now is a win for both the tech hubs and America's heartland.
Lots of people complain that if they had their druthers, if they could get the same job, they'd move to their hometown or move to, name it, attractive heartland city.
Facebook and Twitter have said employees will be able to work from home permanently. Facebook also plans to open remote hiring for some roles with support hubs in multiple cities. Walmart has the same plan for thousands of its tech workers. One man hopes his experience getting a stimulus check for the wrong amount will help others avoid ending up in the same situation. Now, Clark Rendell recently got his check. The amount, $5.60. He says it should have been the full $1,200. Now, he is in contact with the IRS. It says it'll send him a letter with a full explanation of the amount within 15 days. IRS says anyone who believes their check should have been higher should keep their explanation letter and use it to claim the remaining amount on next year's taxes. Now, schools, businesses, and even gyms are reopening, but there is a hidden danger that worries health officials. Water that could make you sick. Chris Conti taking a look at the warning and what you can do about it.
Clear as it may seem, many Americans are facing a hidden health danger as the country reopens, and it is hiding in your water. As we've been sheltering at home, water has been sitting inside of our schools, offices, and even gyms. And that stagnant water provides a perfect place for bacteria to grow.
Well, a lot of the bigger buildings are seeing no use.
For some perspective on what's happening, we turn to Scylla Larson, Senior Water Resources Engineer for the state of Vermont.
This is definitely new territory.
Here's why she says that. With no one inside those large buildings to use water daily, it's just sitting there. Stagnant water can lead to the growth of Legionella or other bacteria. If you ingest that water, it can lead to severe forms of pneumonia. Scylla is also concerned about lead contamination.
When water sits there for a long period of time, that lead can slowly leach into the water and reach levels that are of concern for our health.
Before going back to work, school, or the gym, her advice is to check with a facility manager or even your boss. Ask if they've developed a water management plan. Flushing water systems regularly helps get rid of that bacteria. It's even worth asking the next hotel you stay at if they're doing this.
It's to increase awareness among the population on a topic that really is not very often on people's minds.
An unintended side effect to a pandemic that's impacting public health in ways we can't always see. I'm Chris Conti reporting.
Chris, thank you. Now, symptoms to watch out for if you think you have ingested contaminated water. Well, it can look like other illnesses. Watch for a cough or shortness of breath, along with fever and muscle aches. Now, being under quarantine hasn't always been pretty, and now one woman in California is showing that with these quarantine dolls that she created. Tanya Ruiz has been making realistic Barbie dolls that look like her family. Then she decided to create dolls for the different stages of quarantine. Ruiz started off with a doll that had a ton of snacks, a crossword puzzle, and some cards.
So then I kept coming up with different ideas of things I was going through, like needing to go to the salon and needing to have my mustache waxed and everything that I was going through. I thought it would be funny to do a Barbie of that.
Now, after getting a great response, she created even more quarantine dolls.
I just made them as a comedic commentary on the quarantine. It was just purely to show what I was going through, to be able to laugh and have fun with it, and to be able to, because so many other people I knew were going through the same thing and could relate.
Ruiz uses original Barbie dolls made by Mattel and adds her own props and clothing for the different themes that she creates. Now, her props are 1/6 scale miniatures. Now, she plans on making just one more quarantine doll, which will bring up the total number of dolls in this collection to 17. Unfortunately, none of them are for sale. Now, the pandemic is impacting sports in a unique way that a lot of people may not think about. Teams need their helmets reconditioned. How the pandemic threw a wrench in that important process. And coronavirus may have changed the way people adopt pets, and that's for good. Now, how remote adoption works and the role that it could play even after this pandemic.
Keller and Keller.
Now, while fans are wondering whether the upcoming football season will be played, coaches and equipment companies are making sure a very important piece of the puzzle is ready and up to date. Chloe Nordquist found there's a time crunch for teams and those companies.
They're one of the only pieces of equipment across any industry that has to be reconditioned and recertified.
Reconditioning is happening all year round.
Helmets, football, lacrosse, softball, you name it.
But this certainly is the biggest time frame that we have football equipment into the reconditioning, facilities.
The process is there to keep football players from kids to the pros safe from head injuries. Tony Beam lives it as the executive director of NARA, the association that oversees athletic equipment reconditioning.
Last year, we did just under 2 million helmets. People see the end product on the field, the nice, bright, shiny, clean helmet. But if you really were in a reconditioning plant and saw the condition they came in at the end of the year.
Like most industries, the COVID-19 pandemic put a halt to reconditioning facilities for a number of weeks.
Instead of months ahead, they're going to have them weeks ahead.
Like most businesses and actually most people, the coronavirus pandemic has impacted Riddell's production. Our facilities were closed for a number of weeks. Fortunately, we're almost entirely reopened and back to nearly full capacity again.
Riddell is the largest manufacturer and recertifier of football helmets. Thad Ide is the vice president of product development. He's confident their facility will get helmets back out on time.
We're optimistic that we'll get everybody's equipment back to them in time for them to start playing football this fall.
However, Tony says that might not be true for every facility as they reopen and catch up.
Everybody's going to get their stuff back, but it certainly is going to be a little bit different time frame now.
It depends on other factors, too, like when coaches sent their helmets in and what age group they serve.
The most amount of helmets that are out there are high school and youth helmets. There's just more of those entities there.
High school coaches send helmets and gear in every year to be reconditioned. They pay for the parts that need to be fixed and replace any helmets that are more than 10 years old. The expiration date, according to NARA. The National Federation of State High School Associations released guidelines about returning to sport, mentioning schools need to send in equipment immediately, and delivery arrangements should be made to avoid confusion.
High school football coaches are very optimistic about the season starting. It's what they do. It's what they love. They're anxious to get back to work, back to coaching kids, and back to playing football again.
I'm Chloe Nordquist reporting.
Chloe, thank you. Now, one high school graduate in Michigan is celebrating more than just a diploma. Take a look at this video from Elijah Camardi's ceremony after beating coronavirus. Senior was diagnosed with COVID-19 in April, just days after his grandmother died from that virus. Now, Camardi spent weeks on a ventilator and then went to a rehab institute. When he was deemed healthy enough to go home, the staff gave him a special send-off.
No matter what odds are stacked against you, you should stay positive and thank God that he's looking upon you.
Camardi is looking ahead to the future and will attend trade school. Now, you've probably seen the headlines and videos, animal shelters empty as quarantined people look for pet companions during isolation. But the ASPCA says tens of thousands of those pets are only being fostered and still need permanent homes.
And so what that enabled shelters to do was to practice what we've been asked to practice around social or physical distancing. And it allowed them to retain the services within their shelter for those animals who really don't have another option.
Well, now the ASPCA is encouraging anyone interested in adopting to do so remotely. It's the focus of their National Adoption Weekend this weekend. Well, here's really how it works. On their website, you can find a shelter near you and search their available dogs, cats, and horses. Then the shelter will connect you with a foster, and you can meet the pet over a video call instead of in person.
We really didn't need to meet the kitten because we felt like since the kitten was with a foster parent and we could talk to them, they were able to tell us everything about the cat.
That's Rachel Starrett and her daughter Caroline. Now, after learning that it can be good to adopt in pairs, they added 2 kittens to their family. They say within a week, the foster had helped them get everything they needed for their new pets.
That's wild. Yeah.
Well, the foster dropped the kittens off at their home without ever making physical contact. The ASPCA says they expect some form of remote adoptions to continue regardless of what the post-pandemic world ends up looking like. Well, the Kentucky family is happy to be back together again. Sophia Miller has all the emotion of their reunion.
You can see it in their body language. Huggy and Rosie are so excited to hug. But nobody saw the tears coming. Huggy and Rosie have been social distancing, and this was the first time in 3 months the cousins could touch.
Our whole life we've been together, basically everything we do, and I've had to stay apart from him, and it was really hard.
Amber Collins, Hucky's mom, says they're more like siblings than cousins. She says Hucky's been acting differently since they started social distancing, locking himself in his room and not talking to anyone.
I didn't think that could be stemming from him not being in his normal, because his normal is with Rosie every day. I miss touching people and hugging people and high-fiving my friends when we get something right or win.
But they're finally together again, and that's all that matters.
The world needed some love, and I think they provided it. I just want people to know that it's going to be okay and that you're going to get to be back with your friends and family again. We just need to get through this together. Yep.
Now, South Carolina was one of the first states in the country to reopen, and our team went to find out how restaurants are doing, what's happening to some jobs, and what's going on as customers return.
Ashley Home Store. This is home.
Well, business models upended, profit margins slashed, and dramatic changes inside. Those are just some of the issues impacting the restaurant industry. With all 50 states now open to some extent, Maya Rodriguez returned to one of the earliest states to reopen to see how jobs are faring now.
It's the midday hustle and bustle at Johnny D's Waffles and Benedict's. For chef and owner Jamie Dascalis, it's a welcome sight at her Myrtle Beach, South Carolina restaurant.
It's been going really good the last week.
We first visited the restaurant in April when South Carolina became one of the first states in the country to reopen. At the time, restaurants were still only allowed to offer takeout and delivery. Johnny D's dining area back then, empty. Now, that's changed.
Our wait times, of course, are a lot higher now than they would be.
That's because seating is now reduced by half to comply with social distancing, along with other changes like disposable menus. The moves are just a few of the ones now in place at restaurants across the state and the country.
We did single serve everything as far as condiments, so that way everything just goes in the trash after the customer left. We had a little bit more staff on to be able to help us, sanitize the table, so we wipe down the table, the chairs.
For customers, the changes are noticeable, but not overwhelming.
Once we've sat down, you realize, everybody's at, they're spaced out differently.
And they say just getting to experience indoor dining again is a relief.
And the sense of normalcy it's nice. I think we need to feel a little bit more normalcy because it really calms you down.
Still, the restaurant industry across the country is suffering. Many restaurants have not been able to hire their staff back full time. And the National Restaurant Association says 8 million of those restaurant workers remain furloughed.
At Johnny D's, Jamie Dascalis managed to hire back all of her staff.
Every single one of them came back without hesitation.
And even though revenue is down 25%, she's grateful Johnny D's is still around and in business.
I feel fortunate in the business that we're doing now.
In Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
I'm very happy.
I'm Maya Rodriguez reporting.
Well, Maya, thank you. And a teen is holding sock drives to help people in need. Why he says he chose socks and the big goal he set out to meet. Welcome back. We like to end the rundown with the stories that remind us of the good that is going on. And high school seniors had some tough luck this year, and they won't be able to get the traditional senior years that most graduates do. But that isn't stopping a teen from paying it forward. William Hurd, he loves socks. So he created a sock drive and set the goal to gather 2,020 socks from their community to give to the homeless. And he far exceeded that goal. He ended up collecting 2,700 pairs. And that's all the time we have today for Coronavirus The Rundown. We'll see you next time. I'm Chris Stewart. Thanks for joining us.